Welcome back. From love struck to being love sick, the term love sickness is brought on by the intense changes associated with falling in love. The concept of being madly in love is not simply a poetic notion. People who find the feeling of love too intense may experience love sickness with feelings of depression. Here to help make sense of it all is Dr. Dombrowski. Now, unrequited love, which is love that is not returned. What do we do when faced with that situation? What would you recommend to people who are in a relationship where they experience unrequited love, love that is not returned?
High intensity exercise. 20 minutes on a Stairmaster. Anything to get your mind off of that object.
And what is
because
going...
you're withdrawing. All of a sudden, those chemicals, those receptors in the brain are not being filled by phenylethylamine, the object of your focus. So the next best thing is to either exercise, eat a lot of chocolate. I recommend 1 to 3 pounds of chocolate a day for the first 2 or 3 weeks.
Then you have to follow that up with a lot of exercise.
And exercise, right. You want to keep yourself busy. You want to keep your mind off on other things because you can really get into a downward spiral of despair and depression.
Now, unfortunately, obviously I work better with examples, and one of the examples that I recently was brought to my attention by yourself, and of course we couldn't actually avoid it because it was all over national news, was the astronaut. The astronaut that drove literally 900 miles in diapers to seek revenge as a result of love sickness. Tell us about that example and what was going through the head of that person.
If she was found with crack cocaine, the media would have said, oh, it was the cocaine that made her do all that. But it's not. It's the phenylethylamine in the brain. She's so focused on this object, this individual, this captain. She was so focused she had to get rid of her only obstacle to him. That was all phenylethylamine. That's all love sickness. And I don't know how many other people in high school or college hasn't done a road trip for several hours to meet their object for that one kiss or that one evening together. But the avenging astronaut really took it to another level. I think a lot of guys like that story because it took the spotlight off of them and onto girls.
There you go. Now, what are some of the signs and symptoms so that a lot of times we can't face the truth that the person in front of us doesn't love us as much as we love them. Right. It's just, who knows why? Just the way life is. But nonetheless, what are the signs and symptoms for people dating people or even people outside of the relationship that can, help out a friend and say, hey, dude, you gotta back off. What are some of the signs and symptoms that we should look for?
Anger, restlessness. Low frustration tolerance, basically, because they're not getting their needs met. I think the way to handle that is to talk amongst your friends and get other perspectives, because we do have a blind spot to our own self. And that's why groups work. That's why group therapy works, because other people can see an angle that you're missing. And when you're in the throes of that emotion, reasoning doesn't matter. So the more perspectives you get from other people, the better off you are.
Now, you've obviously put a lot into your research. You've even obviously made a CD of it and everything. What is the next step for you? What will you do with the CD? What will you do with your research? Will you publish it? What do you plan to do with it?
This isn't my theory. This is all over the internet. This has been around for... I think you have to realize that in the state of science today, medical science, it's been stated that there are over 350,000 neurotransmitters in the human brain. We've discovered 30 of them. And I've always been interested in science and neuroscience since I was a kid. I was a precocious kid. I kissed my first girl when I was like 8 or 9 years old. I can remember the actual Beatles song that was playing in the background. It doesn't go anywhere from here. This was just my pilot to try to be KUAM's medical science correspondent.
There you go. Now, how come some people remember some things in their first relationships or relationships that really meant a lot to them in their, in in their years of growing up, while others don't remember as many details? Is it because they weren't as in love with that person as the other person was with them, or what would you say?
There's a lot of cues we miss anyway in terms of sensory input. Color of your hair, type of shirt you're wearing, what have you. And you color that with all the emotions. You know, you'd be wondering whether that other person was even in the same room with you that time that you're talking about, because they would remember a totally different perspective.
Wow.
In terms of the color shirt or the pants or the way the hair was.
And again, so back to the person who doesn't remember all those details. Is it just because that person isn't digging that person at that time, or they're just not into them?
It's a little bit of both. It's the emotions, it's the fact that we don't take in all 100% of everything around us.
Okay, so some people just have that knack for remembering everything and being so in love that they just remember every final detail, whereas other people
First time is always the best, the most memorable.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Smells will, you know, olfactory stimulation or smells can bring back memories from decades past, like the smell of the ocean or the boardwalk, the smell of the wood of the boardwalk. And
or
at
a
least when I
particular
grew up, that's what it
perfume of
was for
someone
me.
that you were in love with. Yeah, okay. Very good. We'll wrap up our interview with Dr. Chris Dombrowski after this short time out, so stay with us.